Right, welcome back to the channel, and in today's video we are talking about something quite serious, and this is the coronavirus. And the reason I wanted to make this video is I've seen around a lot of people I get it, all the memes and people are joking about coronavirus, but I don't think people have had time to sit down and actually think of all the implications and the negative effects that coronavirus will have, from of course people dying, which is absolutely horrific, to the financial implications. So what I'm talking about today is basically what's going to happen financially in terms of the fashion market and the fashion industry specifically, and what effect the coronavirus will have on the fashion industry moving forward. But before I continue, you can follow me on Instagram at Fashion Roadman, and if you're interested in joining a worldwide group chat, I have a Discord, and the link to all of that will be in the description below. As we know, a lot of countries, a lot of towns, a lot of cities have been on lockdown. We have also seen a lot of offices and businesses closing. Movement has also been restricted, and of course this is to slow down the spread of the virus, which obviously is a good move. But just for some context onto kind of like the effect of coronavirus, Sars, which was around, it was kind of like a pandemic between 2002 to 2004, and SARS mainly affected China and some regions of Asia. It barely got outside of Asia, so you can think of SARS as like tiny compared to the widespread effects of coronavirus. Yet in 2003, the ripple effect of SARS actually caused a 1.1% decrease in GDP across all nations affected by SARS. So you can imagine that's just SARS, that's really, really tiny compared to the effects of coronavirus, and literally that's what happened. Now, the true cost in terms of the fashion industry and the true effect that the coronavirus is going to have on the industry, it really comes down to how long it's going to take for factories in China and in Italy especially, which are the two most affected areas, to get back to full production. Because as far as fashion goes, most clothing is produced in Italy and China. So we have the biggest producers who are the most limited in production, and this is causing the fashion industry to basically crash, which I'm going to talk about later on in this video. So first, let's talk about China and the effects that the coronavirus in China is going to have globally. Now, China is really, really deeply embedded in the supply chain of fashion across the globe. Everyone relies on China in terms of fashion, one way or another. I actually have a statistic here, and according to the World Trade Statistical Review, in 2018, China exported 91.1 billion pounds of textiles and 121.5 billion pounds of clothing, making it the world's biggest fabric and textile exporter. So of course what that means is, if China is the biggest exporter of textiles and fabrics and fashion in general, clothing, with the production in China being extremely limited, that will mean that some businesses, some brands can't produce any clothing at all. Now we've seen a lot of businesses, a lot of companies try to diversify their production. So a lot of people have quickly moved production to places like Turkey, Romania. The brand I actually work for, luckily, my boss, whoever's at the top, he's smart enough that we never only produced in China, we produced in places like Romania and Turkey as well. So when the coronavirus happened, they just could easily kind of switch production. But a lot of companies that put all their eggs in one basket and have all their production in China are screwed, because even if you want to change like your production to, let's say, Romania or Turkey, first of all, there's a cost, there's an added cost to what would normally be your production. So now your profits are way less, if you even have a profit. Some people at that point will start making a loss if they were just breaking even producing in China. And then of course, there's an added cost on transporting it, and then there's time as well, because now with the coronavirus, everything being sent is kind of like delayed and needs to be quarantined, and so packages are delayed, and it's really stalling the process of production in general across the whole industry. But like I said, everyone relies on China, and the fact that China is one of the most effective places has stalled the production worldwide. A good example of this is Even because I know a question people have is, but China's not the only place they produce clothing. But China being the biggest exporter of almost everything, even in countries where they make fabrics and textiles themselves, they still need the yarns to make the fabrics and to make the textiles. And what's funny is China's the biggest exporter of yarns. So a lot of companies, even if they're based in India or they're based in Romania, Turkey, France, to make the textiles, they rely on the yarns coming from China. So even if companies move their production out of China to, let's say, a factory in France, how much clothing they can actually produce right now is really, really limited because they cannot get the yarns from China on time or at a rate where it would be feasible. And now a big issue with this is that if loads of companies move their production away from China, China might then retaliate. And China being the exporter of most things, if China are like, okay, we're just not going to export anything to your country, a lot of countries will be screwed. I think a lot of people, they underestimate the power of China and they underestimate the reliance of most countries on the production that does go on in China. Now let's talk about Italy, one of the most effective areas, especially outside of Asia. In the northern part of Italy, as most people know, a lot of production goes on. And like I said earlier in the video, a lot of production is limited and stalled because of the coronavirus and things being quarantined. And this has led to the closure of a lot of shops, from Moncler headquarters to Nike shops. All the shops are closing down because now the whole system is messed up. People are not going to get orders. Also, they want to prevent staff from contacting coronavirus and it spreading between the offices. But I think where fashion-wise this has the most effect is buyers. Now, if people don't know who buyers are every shop, so like a Selfridges, a Harvey Nichols, ASOS, all these big companies have people there called buyers, and buyers' jobs are basically to do a lot of research, crunch the numbers, and figure out what brand will work with their store and will sell well in their store. So these are the people that go to all these little boutiques that you see on the website of ASOS and Selfridges and decide what pieces of the collection they're going to buy. Now, buyers need to work 6 months in advance because obviously a lot of the time when buyers go to showrooms, things aren't in production in the quantity that buyers need them in, but they just go to the showrooms to see samples, to see what the clothes look like, so they can quickly plan that, clear the money that they're going to use to buy it. And there's a lot of things that goes on in the process, which is why those things need to be sorted out 6 months ahead. Now, with fashion, we've seen the Cruise Fashion Week. All the brands have shut down and cancelled all their cruise shows. A lot of Chinese brands cancelled their shows. And I think that the buying and the whole process and the whole lineup being messed up is going to have serious implications in terms of finances. And genuinely, I feel like this will make a lot of companies fold. Like, I don't think a lot of companies will be able to survive the delay in kind of like the whole buying season and stuff like that. Now, a really important thing I want to talk about last is the effect that all of this is going to have on prices. So what effect is it going to have on us, the consumers? Now, of course, as a reactionary precaution, it only makes sense that brands are going to increase the prices because now they've had to move production in an impromptu way to more expensive production that's short term. That's an added cost. The transporting things at this time is really expensive. That's an added cost. So it makes sense that the only way that companies could offset this added cost is just by increasing the price, as they always do. They also need to increase the price to counteract a lot of the effects of coronavirus, from like delays on orders that they've had to refund and stuff like that, or cancelled orders that they've had to give compensation for. So it does make sense that a lot of things, whenever this, hopefully soon, whenever this pandemic ends, prices will be extremely high. Also, in general, when the pandemic is over, I feel like fashion as an industry, it will crumble only because fashion is not that essential. Like right now, I think the more important things are things like food, hand sanitizer, hand wash, stuff like that. I think most people, especially in the West, have clothes. So I don't think people care or will care too much about buying clothes when the pandemic ends. I think people will more be focused on kind of like, how can we get our lives back on track? How can we pay rent? How can we do this? How can we do that? And that would be a big hit to the fashion industry. Because obviously there are things like the fashion industry, or let's say the entertainment industry, like the entertainment stuff, the arts, those type of things aren't the most essential things to life. And when something like the pandemic happens, people that have their priorities straight won't be buying clothes in the near future. But yeah, literally financially and economically, there's always a ripple effect. So you have things like, obviously the clothing sales are less because people now are buying more food and hand sanitizer. And then clothing stores are now they have these big stores where they're paying a lot of rent for. And if they can't sell enough garments, they can't pay rent. And then if they can't pay rent, whoever their landlords are can't pay their mortgage, or they can't pay their bills or whatever they need to pay. And then those people who they're supposed to pay can't pay their bills, and that's how you have an economic crisis. It's just a ripple effect. So I definitely feel like, I'm not like a predictor or anything, but there'll definitely be an economic crisis. The fashion industry will definitely crumble to some extent. And I don't know how they're going to offset that, like when this whole thing hopefully subsides soon. I don't know how exactly buyers are gonna realign it. Yeah, it just seems a bit messy. But in conclusion, I guess now brands know the importance of supply chain diversification. And hopefully this will be a lesson to a lot of companies that you don't put all your eggs in one basket. But yeah, on that note, thank you for watching. The effects of coronavirus are definitely very serious. I get it that people like to make light-hearted jokes about very serious things to kind of take the stress of it away, but I think sometimes people are joking about it too much. Like, this is literally a thing where people are dying from this virus. So it is very serious. But yeah, comment down below what you think are some of the other effects of coronavirus. I'm very curious to know what you guys think. It doesn't even have to be about fashion, just in general, different industries. But yeah, thank you for watching. Stay safe, wash your hands.